You all leave the lights on for them to be able to see the handouts real quick. You should notice the handouts have the front has information on different parts of a mushroom, and so you can talk about the mushrooms you might find, with intelligence and be able to describe them. And then inside there's information on different websites and different books that you might be interested in looking at, and there's a glossary of different words. And then, of course, at the back, the most important stuff, the mushroom hunter's rules. A mycophagist is someone that eats mushrooms. So there are old mycophagists and there are bold mycophagists, but there are no old and bold mycophagists. And what I'm trying to get at there is, don't eat mushrooms that you pick just because I say something here that says you can eat them. Because unless you're an expert, you may not be able to identify them exactly. And most of them are not going to be poisonous, but they'll make you wish that you were dead because you'll be really, really sick. And so, you really shouldn't eat a mushroom that you pick unless you really have it identified well by somebody that knows what they're doing. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, and don't run out and eat a mushroom just because I say so. Okay, now rule number 1 was, when in doubt, throw it out. And rule number 2 is save a sample when you cook it for the poison control center. So you can take it to the emergency room and they'll be able to know how to help you get better. So those are things to think about when you're out there looking for mushrooms. Okay, now inside there in the glossary, there's a word I'd like for you to look at, mycorrhizal. If you don't learn anything else from this talk, you need to learn about that word, mycorrhizal. It's Greek for, it talks about the myco means root of the fungi and rhizal is root. So it's the root fungus connection between fungus and plants. We're all plant people or we wouldn't be here, right? It's a native plant project. So it's really important to understand the relationship between fungi and plants, because almost all plants have a mycorrhizal relationship with fungi. The fungus provides the plant with water, with minerals, micronutrients, and the plant, making sugars from the photosynthesis, provides a little sweet flavor food and stuff for the mushroom, for the fungus. And so they both help each other and they both do better because they're working together. Now this is not unusual for fungi. Fungi have a lot of different relationships with different living creatures, and they're symbiotic. One that I could think of is orchids. There's people here in the Orchid Society, I see in the audience. Orchids, if you think about a seed is what? A little germ of life, and then there's some food around it, and then there's a coating to kind of protect it all. Well, orchids don't have that. Orchids just have the seed of life in there and then a little protective coating. They don't have any food in there. They're completely dependent on the fungus, on a mycorrhizal relationship with the fungus to feed it when it is a baby. So, the fungus immediately forms a relationship with this seed and starts feeding it, and it starts to grow. And, after, who knows, I don't know how long it takes to grow several, leaves and stuff before they start, making photosynthesis. But eventually, they start feeding the fungus and feeding it back, paying back what it did for what it gave it at the beginning. But just the idea that a species would let another species that's not even another totally different life form be in charge of its reproduction is just amazing to me. It's amazing enough if it was within the same species, but to have another life form be responsible for raising your little babies is just amazing to me. And all this kind of flies in the face of what we were taught in biology, right? About Darwinian evolution. And Darwin thinks survival of the fittest, the biggest, the best, the strongest makes it, the weakest, they die. But these are examples of plants and different types of life forms working together in a symbiotic way, and everyone benefiting from that. So it's really a different way to kind of think of things. And another thing that another example of a symbiotic relationship would be a lichen. Now, let me show you this. This is a book that someone gave me. This is about lichens. This is lichens of North America. Now, I don't know what size of book it would be for lichens of Asia or something. I mean, it's just, there's a gazillion lichens. And obviously, these are ones that they have identified, that they know about. There's probably a bunch that they don't. But a lichen is a fungus. The body is a fungus, and it has a little layer of algae in there. The algae is what gives it the color. Sometimes it's cyanobacteria that's in there. The cyanobacteria also does photosynthesis. And so the structure, the fungi in the lichen protects the cyanobacteria or the algae, and provides it with water, provides it with some food. And then inside the lichen there, the algae and the cyanobacteria make sugars from the photosynthesis that they conduct, because the lichen is transparent, light can go through it. And so they both benefit from that. And of course, lichens are everywhere, right? You see them on wood and on rocks and stuff like that. And the ones on rocks, what they're doing probably there is a lot of times they're eating away at the rock. And they say that a lot of the soil building in the world is because of lichens, eating away at rocks. So I don't know about you, but it seems like it would take an awful long time to make the soil if it's one little bite at a time from a lichen. But apparently that just shows you how long life has been around on Earth. But before we go any further, I want to do a little show and tell here. If I can hold all these things in my hand. I don't need the clicker right now, but I don't know why I'm holding it. But let me turn off the lights here real quick. Can you turn off those lights? Oh, okay. Then let me leave this one on then. Okay. As you notice, I have some sticks here. These are ash tree sticks in my front yard in San Benito. Notice they're just regular sticks, nothing up my sleeve or anything here. Let me turn off the light. And I'm going to turn on a UV light here. And they glow. Oh. See how they glow? Now, these are just glowing orange. And I chose these because they were big and people could see them from a distance. Let me show the people at home. See, I don't know if you can see these at home, but notice that it's glowing. And those are the fungi, the lichens. Now, what's going on there is they think that they don't really know why lichens do that, but those are probably tropical lichens that have managed to live up here in the semi-tropics. And tropical lichens will glow like that. And they think that has something to do with protecting themselves from the UV light, because in the tropics, the UV light's a lot stronger. And UV light is used to sterilize water, for instance, and things like that. It'll kill animals and kill germs and things like that if it's bright enough. So they think that it's grabbing the UV light and kind of changing the wavelength to make it more safe for them, so it doesn't damage the lichen. At least that's the theory. So anyway, that was just a little bit of show and tell there, just get you all excited. Okay. Not quite. Not those kind of mushrooms. Okay, let's see. Now let's go on to our move right along here to the PowerPoint. Now, I did this PowerPoint. The main part of this is mushroom photographs that I took at Ramsey Park in about 2007. 2007, there was a wet period. I'd been working out there with master naturalists, killing guinea grass like I do every day. And all of a sudden I noticed all this fungus starting, these mushrooms popping up everywhere. And I'd been, to the Telluride Mushroom Festival. I'd seen the light. And so I decided that I would take pictures of all the mushrooms and keep a photographic record of what came up, because I knew it was kind of a rare event. And so anyway, that's the core of this. So just assume that the mushroom pictures on here are from Ramsey Park or around there, unless they're otherwise labeled or I tell you something different. Because there are pictures here from, I've added some pictures in here from Colombia as well as Colorado. Okay, so our friend the fungus, the general overview of the world of mushrooms and fungi. You'll learn about the mushroom life cycle, the importance of the fungus among us, and you'll learn where to find more information about our friend the fungus. Now, every book has different numbers, but this is I got this from one somewhere. There are 6,000 common higher fungi in North America. Well, there's gazillions. The recent Fungi magazine has an article about how many types of fungi are there in the world, and they can only estimate because they've only probably identified about 20% or 10% of what's out there. But the latest estimate that they think might be accurate is 15 million. So I don't know, you can pick whatever number you want, and it's probably not, none of those are probably quite correct. Who knows? They're all estimates. Anyway, many of the fungi are saprophytes, which means that they decompose wood and stuff. If it weren't for them decomposing wood, we'd be up to our gills in wood, right? And leaves and all sorts of stuff. They clean the world for us. And they recycle all the goodies, for the other plants to use and animals to use. Anyway, they're beneficial and they help recycle old plant material. Now, fossils of ancient fungi have been found, and they found one that was like looked like a telephone pole. It was just huge, and apparently those are found all over the world for a while, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. Something evolved to eat them or to kill them or whatever, maybe a disease. But for years they couldn't figure out what the heck they were, and finally a few years ago they decided they were fungi. They were just giant poles that emitted spores, and it was called prototaxites. Anyway, they've been around a long time. Now, the fruiting body of the mushroom is what you see. The rest of it is underground there, growing in the ground. The organism is made up of a network of tiny threads called mycelia that spread through the soil and food source and break down organic material. That's the white parts here are would be the mycelium, and the mycelium is made up of hypha, which are like the little strands of hair, of fibers. It's kind of like a rope that, you look at a rope, it's made out of a lot of different fibers that are all woven together. The mycelia is the rope part, and the fibers are the hypha. Anyway, many mushrooms grow in a symbiotic relationship, as I mentioned, with trees, the mycorrhizal relationship. And knowledge of this not only helps you locate certain mushrooms, if you're looking for some to eat, certain ones or grow with certain trees or certain plants. So you can kind of look for those trees and find those mushrooms maybe. They also might help you identify mushrooms if you see them always find them under certain plants or with certain plants. Anyway, I've already mentioned this, so let me move on. This little mushroom let us see her gills. This is out at Ramsey Park. You can see how dry it is, but yet that mushroom popped right up. And then some mushrooms, when you look at the gills, some gills will grow all the way to the stem, and some will be open like this. And so that's also part of the identification process. You could kind of tell something. The books might say that they grow a certain way or the other. Then some don't have gills, but they have polypores. They're just kind of like a sponge or whatever, and they have little pores that the spores drop out of. This is a bolete mushroom from Colorado. If you see, it looks like a sponge kind of. These are very good to eat, and you can tell that they're pretty big, and they would have a lot of food on them. Okay, mushrooms will grow with a membrane covering that protects the little mushroom as it grows, as it's popping out of the ground. As you see, this one sort of has a little bit of a veil still there. It hasn't quite sloughed off. This one's in the process of sloughing off. This one is opening up, and then there's a little ring right down here where this was attached. And then these here, these are like little eggs kind of coming up. Remember this slide because I'll show you what this turned into in a minute. Okay, the partial veil breaks apart and kind of sloughs off, and it leaves a little ring like this. So that's another part of the identifying the mushroom. Others have veils too, but they don't have a ring. But like this one, it's still got a little bit of the veil kind of sticking around there. This one has a big ring. The veil is part of the identification of this one. It's little pieces of it stick on the mushroom. This is a one that's considered a great one to find that's supposed to be good to eat. And then this one, for some reason, it has these three parts that didn't break off. I don't know if it's supposed to be this way or if it's just a freak or whatever, but I thought that was interesting. But this one, for instance, though, this was growing at Ramsey Park. Ramsey used to be the old dump. Mushrooms absorb things that are in the soil. So if there's heavy metals in the soil, if there's lead, if there's like someone dumped a bunch of old paint down there and there's cadmium or something there, these mushrooms would pick that up and would become part of it. So you got to be careful. If you pick a mushroom and want to eat it, you got to make sure it's growing in a safe place, in the woods or somewhere like that. They've done studies where mushrooms growing along the highway had higher lead content because of the lead gasoline that had built up in the soils around the roads. So that's something to consider. Okay, another type of fungi that grows is a puffball. Now these are puffballs I found out in Omito. They were a little bit hairy and fuzzy kind of, and I don't think these would be good to eat, but a lot of puffballs are really considered great ones to eat. But these were really tiny. They're about the size of a quarter maybe. And the idea is that when they're mature, they're full of spores and someone steps on them or something and they spew out a puff of spores everywhere. Let's see, I accidentally made that go backwards, I think. Okay. Anyway, that's why they're called puffballs, because they with a little puff, they make a big mess. This is the Colombian puffball. It was about the size of a softball. Some of them, my niece found one next to her house in Connecticut that was about the size of a soccer ball almost. And she called her friend, and I said, I think that's edible, but don't eat it just because I told you to. And I was on the phone, and she called her friend, and her friend said, yeah, eat it. It's fine, it's fine. So she sliced it up and cooked it and lived to tell the tale. Anyway, she liked it. She said it was like the ones that you could get in the store or whatever. Anyway, this is back to those other puffballs that I found in Omito. One thing I found was they were kind of growing in a little fairy ring. A fairy ring it's like the fungus starts growing one year here, and then the next year it grows out a little bit, and then it sends up mushrooms around there. Then the next year it grows out a little further, and it runs around there, and it kind of becomes a circle, right? And over the years, it gets bigger and bigger. And sometimes you just get an arc. Sometimes there's a rock or a stump or something in the ground, and it can't quite make a whole circle. But this was out at Omito, and there was like You can't really see it in this one too well, but there's kind of an arc here. And then these were like in a line. And so it's just kind of an interesting phenomena that you might run into. Okay, these are Earth stars. And these are all ones I took these pictures in Colombia. I have seen some like this one up here in New Mexico. So I've never seen any down here, but you can find these in the United States. And they're kind of like a puffball. The center part will form the spores and then puff up. But it's kind of got like a little veil thing that opened up to make a little star. And they're kind of pretty. But they're fairly common. You can find them in a lot of places. Okay, now when you're going out to look for mushrooms, you need a flat basket or something to carry them in. You need some wax paper, paper sacks. If you use plastic, it'll sweat too much in there. The plastic's not good. You need a trowel or a sturdy knife or something to dig with, because sometimes you want to see how it's coming out of the ground, because there's some poisonous ones that grow out of an egg, and the egg may not be real obvious sometimes. And so that's one reason you want to dig them up sometimes, is to double check to see what they look like. You get your field ID book, your small magnifying glass, so you can kind of look at the details, and a notebook to keep your notes. If you find something you really like and it's underneath this big tree here on this certain place, you can make a note, and maybe next year you can go back and hopefully find some more there. And there's your little kit ready to go. Now, when you're identifying mushrooms, you want to look at the color, whether they change color after you pick them, the location you found them, were they in the open field or were they in the woods, the size. Size sometimes has more to do with the nutrition available rather than the type of mushroom it is, but that kind of sometimes can make a difference. And the smell, every good mushroom hunter I've ever seen, as soon as they pick a mushroom, they smell it. I can't smell worth a darn. But, well, I mean, I do smell sometimes, but I can't with my nose. But they have distinct smells sometimes, and that's part of the identification process. Is it mycorrhizal? Do you always find it with pine trees, or do you always find it with oaks or something? Is the cap a funny shape, or is it attached to the stem? Is it textured, striped, smooth? Are there notches? Does it have gills or pores? The color of the gills. Are they widely spaced or closely spaced? The stalk, sometimes there's not a stalk. Sometimes it's really thick. Sometimes it might be off center, or there might be a ring on it. And sometimes it grows from an egg-like structure or cup. See, this would be one that has notches on the edges, lots of little ones. This one doesn't have a stem, or they're different kinds of stem. And these are wide-spaced gills, just as examples. Now, one way to identify mushrooms is you can make a spore print. You get the mushroom, you get the cap, you put it on a white piece of paper. I thought I'd be smart and use blue one time, because I thought surely this is a white spore. So I put it on the blue, and it turned out to be brown spore. So, you never can tell by looking at the mushroom really what the color of the spore is usually. So you put it on the paper. You can put a cup over it if they're small, just to make sure that they don't blow away, or also just to keep them moist. This one was really moist. You can see the moisture on the paper there. But anyway, that helps you figure out the color of the spores and identify the mushroom. And plus, it looks kind of pretty, right? You could do this with your kids or something, maybe have fun. Okay, one day I went out to Ramsey, and I was working out there, probably killing guinea grass again, and I found a couple of mushrooms. So the next day I went back to take pictures of them, and those two mushrooms, this is what was left of them, and the other 4 more came out. So this is what is in these once you take the water out. So there's just almost nothing there but water. So that just shows you kind of how how simple a mushroom is. It's just not very many cells, just a bunch of moisture, and the materials, the parts to make spores and to spread. Okay, so bracket fungus grow on trees. This is an ebony tree in Omito. If you'll notice, it's kind of white underneath here, but yet the spores have colored this kind of reddish brown. So there was a researcher, and he was wondering what made a Stradivarius violin sound so good. And he found there was a place where a Stradivarius had been broken, and just, there was an accident and it was all smashed. And so he was able to get a little piece of wood from the Stradivarius violin, and he looked under a probably electron microscope at it, and he thought he saw little pores. And what he concluded was that probably Stradivarius chose wood that had bracket fungus in it. And the bracket fungus, when it grows doesn't grow through it doesn't hurt the plant. It just grows kind of in between the other cells, and with its mycelium and stuff in there. And then when everything dies, all that will die back and it'll leave pores. So he thought his theory was that the wood had little pores in it, which helped it resonate better and would help with the sound. And that's the secret to Stradivarius violins. Who knows? But it sounds good. Okay, here's some other examples from Colombia that I got. They're kind of pretty. This is the same one. This is the top. This is the bottom. And these are like little tubes or something. I guess I can only assume that they make the spores in the tubes. But anyway, they look real pretty. Now this is again at Ramsey Park. Some types of fungi can break down the cellulose and sugars in the wood and degrade the lignin in the wood, which decomposes it. They're one of the few things that can do that. This is considered a crust, is what that's called. They grow on old wood, old limbs. This is another one from Ramsey Park. And this is some other bracket fungus. These are all kind of hairy, kind of furry. Interesting. Okay, now we are very lucky because we have this guy growing in our area here. This is the one that I said, the slide that had all the little eggs that were coming up. I said that I would show you what grew out of those eggs. This is it. It's a lattice stinkhorn mushroom. They're called stinkhorns because they stink. They give off a rotted flesh smell to attract flies, and the flies then carry the spores, I guess, to maybe a dead creature or to someone's poop or something, and drop the spores there, and then they grow again. As you see, they come out of the egg. They have kind of a mucus kind of covering, and the flies show up. That kind of dries out a little bit. Flies are still showing up. And then it dries out more, and flies are there still. So that's a really special mushroom. This was out at Ramsey Park. That was at Ramsey Park. That was in the area where you work. Yeah, I don't think they're mycorrhizal or anything, but I really don't know. It's interesting where they grow. This is one I found just a few weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago in Austin. But I took the picture with my phone, and it's a different format, and I couldn't really get it working better. This is the best I could transfer it. But it's kind of like ours, only it's a lot smaller, and it's on a stem. And it was about, 6 inches tall or something like that. And it was in my friend's backyard. The chambered stinkhorn. And then these are from Colombia. Notice this is kind of like ours, only a smaller version. It's a basket type, but look at this one. These grow up in the middle of the late afternoon and start the veil starts forming, and overnight the spores start maturing, and when the spores are mature, then it starts stinking. And they say that this is to help ants crawl up to get the spores, but I never saw any ants around it. I just think it looks neat. Anyway, we found quite a few of those in Colombia. And again, there's, the guide of our group was walking around sniffing. There's one over here somewhere. And, and sure enough, he'd find it and he'd take pictures. His name was Daniel Winkler, and he runs a group called Mushrooming. And they go to, usually it's somewhere in South America. Lately, they've been going to Colombia. I think they're leaving tomorrow for Colombia, in fact. And then they go to Asia. They went to Tibet for a while. Now they're going to Bhutan. And I think it would be really neat to go to Bhutan. But over there, everyone eats mushrooms all the time. And so it's just part of their lifestyle. But anyway, he calls this a cross-dressing mushroom. But anyway, you might want to look at his website, mushrooming.com, because he's got a gallery there of all the photographs from all of his tours. And he's a really good photographer. He has special things with this camera. And so if you really want to look, if you like these pictures, you'll really love his. Now, this is another one from Colombia, and I don't know if these guys are getting spores or not, but look, all these little flies on all the mushrooms. There's not any on the wood, but they're all just sitting there on the white mushrooms. I don't know if they're maybe it's a cooler temperature or something, or maybe they just think it looks cool. I don't know, but it seems like there's a reason for them to be there. Like they might be attracted to those mushrooms for the spores. I don't know. Anyway, this is again one at Ramsey, and they kind of were slimy looking. They kind of were moist. This is one that's coming up, and you notice a fly here. There's one here coming up too underneath this one. But I've wondered if that fly was there just because it was moist, or because he's attracted to get the spores. I don't know. I think that's interesting, though. Like I said, that's at Ramsey. Okay, these are all at Ramsey. Some are tall, some are small. These are really tiny. And some are super tiny. This is about an inch. So this is on a piece of grass, and there were like three mushrooms, maybe 4 mushrooms there, little tiny mushrooms. I don't know how I saw that, but and then this was kind of a coral mushroom or something that was at a Ramsey. It didn't grow any bigger than that. It was really tiny, but it was kind of neat. And see how strong these are? They push up with a lot of force. The ones that I showed you before that I said were good to eat, that were kind of long and tall, they say that those will actually grow through concrete or asphalt, that they're so strong. I can't imagine, but this one. These are called shaggy banes, is what I think they are. I'm just guessing, though. I'm not very good at identification, but these are supposed to be very good to eat. But like I said, these were at Ramsey, and so they might be contaminated with some kind of something that was dumped there years ago. Now, these are bird nest fungi. I found this in my backyard. This is on a Turk's cap stick, an old Turk's cap dead stick. But they all were growing along the line there. And then, as you see, they look like little bird's nests with little eggs, but those are like little puffballs that are there. The idea is a drop of rain hits it and it spews up all the spores. And then these are like a veil that's over these. There's one that's starting to open up, and they're not quite ready yet. Now, these are similar ones from Colombia, different ones. And like this is a leaf, that's my finger. These are so tiny. I mean, just barely there. But anyway, you might find those in your backyard. You never know. Okay, now cordyceps. The people that ran these tours of Colombia, there's a PhD, has a PhD in mycology from Bogota that joins us down there. And her specialty was cordyceps. Cordyceps are a type of fungi that attack insects. But the interesting thing about them is that the spore gets inside the insect's body and it grows in non-lethal areas. So the insect stays alive and it's walking around and stuff. And somehow the fungus directs the behavior of the animal. And like with an ant, they call these zombie ants because the ant is a zombie. It's being directed by the fungi, and it'll infect the ant. The ant will kind of walk around kind of funny and not do any work, but just kind of walk around, and then the fungus directs it to climb up a stick or a tree or something, a branch. I think it says 20 inches above the ground, a certain area above the ground it likes, and a certain humidity and a certain amount of light and everything. And so it directs the ant to go out to the end of a leaf, clamp really hard with its mouth on the leaf, and hang there. And then while it's doing that, the rest, the fungi finishes growing in there and finishes off the ant. It finishes off the crucial parts of the brain and everything, and then sends out a little spike like those and infects more ants. So they're really interesting. And each species of insect has a different type of fungi that attacks it. You know, they're all specific to certain insects. So this was like a June bug kind of insect of some kind, I guess. And it was directed to dig down into the ground, bury itself, and then the fungus grew up.
That's the premise of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So this was a wasp apparently on the end of the leaf, holding on, and this is like these little white things or whatever. These are the spore producing aspect of the fungus. This is like a beetle of some kind, and those are all giving out spores. This is a caterpillar. It was made to burrow, and then this popped up. And this is like a grasshopper, so you see the legs. And then these are all the spore producing parts of the fungus. So we probably have some of these here in North America. We just don't really pay attention to them. Ones in Tibet, ones like this of the gypsy moth are considered a good medicine. They're considered a cancer cure, something to enhance your immune system, and of course, aphrodisiac. So because of aphrodisiac rumors, they're really expensive and everybody wants them. And there's hundreds of, if not thousands of people every year out there combing the ground looking for these. And they find them in baskets, they find basketfuls. And they're worth more if they're whole like this than if they're broken apart. So they try to keep them whole. But that's a big deal in Asia and China. But anyway, apparently I read this recently, in fact, we've all heard about the locusts in the eastern United States. There's not locusts, cicadas, excuse me. What is it, 13-year cicadas and 17-year cicadas or whatever, they're all popping up right now. Apparently there's a cordyceps. It's not a cordyceps, the description of what it does is the same as the cordyceps, but it's a slightly different species of fungi. But it does the same thing, you know, it attacks the cicadas. It said that what I read said that it grew around the brain and that it emitted some kind of hormone or something that directed the behavior. So they may know more about how this works now than they did. But anyway, sounds pretty interesting. So apparently that's a version of cordyceps or that type of fungi that's in North America here, getting the cicadas. And the one that's the 17-year-old cicada, they said that those spores have to last 17 years or whatever. They said that's the longest time that they've been able to record, spores staying viable. I guess that's true. Oops, let's see. I went backwards. Okay, here's one that was being dug up and looked at. So these would have grown longer and up to the ground, up to the surface, if we'd left it there. Okay, and these are a few other interesting types from Colombia. This is a jelly mushroom. They have some of those in other places too, but that's just the one type. This was a real pretty one that's really tiny. Coral mushroom, and then purplish ones here. Now, again, some more purple ones. These are kind of interesting the way they grow. They're pretty. This is one I found in Colorado, and it doesn't have spores, gills, and it doesn't have the polypore. This one is what they call, it's got like it's called a hedgehog mushroom because it's got feels like a hedgehog underneath there, like if you've ever petted a hedgehog, they're kind of like little points. Well, that's got little points on it. And when I picked it, it just started stinking to high heaven. And they said that it was supposed to be good for dyeing wool or dyeing cloth. So they knew, other people in the group knew what it was because this lady had a talk on dyeing with mushrooms. Okay, and then Amanita muscaria from Colorado. And this is the classic mushroom that everybody likes to draw. Okay, now there's a lot of words here, but let me just talk about this real quick. You can grow mushrooms in different ways. You can grow it in a sack with a sterile medium in there, sterile grain. You can grow them they make logs that they have holes drilled in it, and you get little plugs and you hammer the plugs in and dump the log in water and then put a plastic bag over it and put it in your closet and keep it moist, and it'll fruit with mushrooms. Or you can grow them on coffee grounds. There's all sorts of things you can do, and you can learn how to do that by going to somewhere like the Telluride Mushroom Festival or different mushroom festivals and learn how to do it. But some mushrooms are good to eat, but others are deadly poisonous. I'm going to give you my talk again. Don't ever eat a wild mushroom unless it's been identified by an expert. Most will make you sick or wish you were dead, and they'll cause major organ damage sometimes and hurt or kill you. There's some types that taste good, they look good. You finish them and you think, man, that was great, and then 3 days later your liver's dead, and it kills you. So you got to be careful. Some are tasty, some are delicacies. Some add texture and form and taste to the food and are nutritious, but others are poisonous. And without an expert, you don't really know which one's which. And I'm not an expert, so don't go. So this is the Telluride Mushroom Festival. Well, here, and let me go back. You notice everybody's got long sleeve shirts on and stuff. It's kind of cold up there. It was kind of cold that day, kind of wet. This was in the middle of August. And this is another year, looking at the rainbow there. And this is the mushroom parade. That's the peak of the festival on Saturday. Everyone dresses up in different costumes and walks down the street and acting crazy. But at the festival, they have people gather mushrooms And then the people identify them and put them out so you can see what they look like and get information from different kinds. And so it's really good as far as learning. The countryside is beautiful, and you go into the woods there and you find all these mushrooms growing everywhere.
What's the deal with truffles? Aren't truffles a mushroom?
Truffles are a mushroom. They grow in the ground, and they're made to, they smell real distinct. And so that's how they get their spores spread around, is because they attract pigs or animals to dig them up and eat them, and then they spread them out with their droppings and stuff. And so in the old days, they used to use pigs to find them, but pigs would eat them. So now they use dogs, because the dogs don't eat them. The dogs will dig and have fun, and you find them, and then but they don't want to eat them. So that it's better to use a dog, probably.
But those always stay underground.
They are always underground, yes. And you know, I don't know that much about them, but apparently they're starting to find some over here in America. You know, they're not all over in Europe, in France, but and some people they're trying to like maybe try to grow some, you know, like inoculate areas underneath certain trees or whatever to see if they can grow them. But there was a tent over here, and these people were camping out, and they had found all these mushrooms. These were all bags full of mushrooms. They were drying them out in the sun, and at the festival, you know, they're selling bags of mushrooms, spawn here, so that you can grow your own mushrooms. And even some non-human creatures out there, you know, selling things. And these are the costumes. This was the first place that year. They came, you can imagine how hot that got in the sun. They were all walking like this, you know, kind of walking around. They didn't do too well in the parade. But anyway, they did win first place. And then this is Andrew Weil here at one of the mushroom festivals. I think he's high on mushrooms there. And different costumes and stuff. And fun for all ages. This guy was head of the Telluride Mushroom Festival for many years, and he's retired now. And this guy is Art Goodtimes was his name, and he was used to be a city council member up there in Telluride, and that's another reason why it's up there. He lives in California now, but he always comes as kind of the MC of the outfit. And there's even a few little mushrooms that come. And I don't know if you can read this, but he's holding a sign that says Mind Medicine, RX psilocybin. If you want to be cool, you call it psilocybe. It's not psilocybin, it's psilocybin. Just so you'll know, you'll sound like you know what you're talking about. If you say psilocybin, they think you're a hippie, you know. Anyway, fungus grows all around us every day. It helps us recycle old organic material into usable food for other species. It's important and a little bit less understood part of the natural world around us. And that's the end of my talk. Let me say a few other things real quick here since I've got time. There's all sorts of information that's available about this that I couldn't really touch on because we have time limitations. But you know, they're investigating how a forest works together. You know, there's ancient forests that aren't torn down yet or aren't logged. What they found is, like, there'll be a big tree and there'll be a lot of little trees around it. And apparently they're all seem to be in connection with each other somehow through the mycorrhizal fungi that's in the ground. And all this is really hard to study, so that it's really takes a while to, and a lot of imagination, I think, to kind of figure out what's going on. But, you know, for instance, they've put radioactive water over here on this side of the group of trees, and then it shows up way over here on the other side a few months later or whatever. And there's no logical way for it to go from one to the other. It's not like it's going downhill, but they think that it's being transported by the mycelium on the fungi. I mean, I don't know if they've tracked it, or, you know, they know for sure that's what it did, but you know, they've been investigating all this stuff, and they found that like if bark beetles show up and start attacking a tree, it sends out some kind of a signal, and apparently it's carried by the mycelium to the other trees, warning them that there's danger out there. And the other trees then will start producing more sap on there to kind of drip around to kind of retard the insects from attacking them, and things like that. So there's apparently some kind of a, you know, the trees aren't just all there, you know, independently. They're all working together, and apparently, who knows, with maybe the mushrooms, and maybe there's other things working with them, right? And they've also noticed that there's a lot of times there's bacteria that are with the mycelium, and they're thinking that the bacteria may have some kind of role in helping the plants, you know, with the getting nutrition and all that stuff. The bacteria may be playing some kind of role in there. And on some of the bacteria, they mentioned viruses. So who knows if they're doing something that has to do with that. And then on those viruses, they found smaller viruses. It's almost like one of those Russian dolls, you know, you open it up and there's another one inside, and you just, you know, there's ad infinitum. And in other words, the more they look, the closer they look at all this, the more complicated it is, and the more fantastic it is that all these things are working together. And I think if we really knew what was going on in the ground below us, it would just blow all of our minds, you know, because there's so much going on there that we don't know. They say that, I mean, I can't understand this, but in one of these books, Paul Stamets is a very good author and a very well-known and intelligent guy that knows a lot about mushrooms. He's written these books on how to grow mushrooms, Mycelium Running. That's a very well-known book. You might want to start with this one. He's also written this one, Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World. And but he's one that I heard talk in 2001 at the festival, and he really, you know, impressed me. But anyway, that's a name that you need to know about, and you might want to check out his website too. It's on the handout. And there's something common with them. Why are so many mushrooms poisonous? Well, you know, let me back up a little bit and mention this. The difference between, you know, in evolution, plants broke off from the family tree, and then mushrooms broke off after that, apparently. And then what was left were animals, right? With us. So fungi are actually closer to us than they are to plants. You know, you see them growing up, you think, well, they look like plants, right? Or maybe I think everyone thought they were plants, just a weird type of plant for a long time. But when they started, you know, if you look at their cells, they have cell walls just like plants. And so everyone assumed that they were cellulose in the cell walls like plants. But when they started looking at it, they realized that it was chitin was there. And chitin they thought it was only made by animals, and plants made cellulose. So when they realized that there were chitin was what was in the cell walls, they realized that mushrooms and fungi were closer to us than they are to plants. So the other thing that mushrooms do is makes them distinctive from animals, is we eat food and then digest it and poop out what we don't want. Mushrooms, what they do, they evolved, they thought that was too much trouble. They they emit different chemicals and digest the food outside their body, and then they just absorb the part that they want. So they don't have to worry about going to the restroom or, getting rid of the stuff that they don't want. So anyway, my guess as far as the answer to your question is that because they do produce all these weird chemicals to digest food and stuff, a lot of them are very unique to fungi. Some of those must be poisonous to us, is what I'm thinking. It's not necessarily that they're wanting to be poisonous to keep from being eaten or anything necessarily. It's just that's just something that's part of their makeup, and it happens to make us sick. So at least that's my guess. I've never really heard anyone talk about why mushrooms are poisonous, but that would be my guess, is it's mainly just the exotic chemicals that they produce to digest food. Because they digest things that no one else can, like wood and stuff. So they're really special.